asking, we'll get away to a place where we don't know. About to see the world in action, what we can be, life with no distractions. We'll get away, this is what we waited for. Take my hand, we'll make it somehow. We can't miss out. I'm done living life with the lights out. Die with my own doubts. Be free with me. Let's go. Be free with me. Not looking back, eyes on the freeway, Bonnie and Clyde, a classic cliche. We're on the run, this is what we waited for. Take my hand, we'll make it somehow. We can't miss out. I'm done living life with the lights out. Die with my own doubts. Be free.
Welcome to That's Gotta Hurt Live, wherever you're watching. I hope you're making tonight your masterpiece. My name is Dr. David Geier, double board certified orthopedic surgeon, sports medicine specialist, and media medical expert. Whether you play fantasy sports, whether you gamble on sports, or whether you're just a diehard fan, I explain and help you understand the injuries of pro and college athletes so that you can win your fantasy league, hopefully win your bets, or just enjoy the games more. Thank you so much for joining. A lot of good stuff to get to, so I'm not going to have a lot of precursors. I want to get through a lot, and we have very, very breaking news over the last 3 minutes or so that I want to get to about Jamison Williams. We're going to talk a little bit about Taysom Hill, talk about Christian McCaffrey, if we have time, Draymond Green, and Cristiano Ronaldo. So a lot to get to. As always, I'm not involved in these injuries and treating the player, so I am just analyzing what is being reported in the media. But again, having said that, I've done this for a long time. I think I can give you pretty good insight in it. And if you want to ask some of your own questions about players that on teams that you cheer for or games that you potentially want to bet on, leave those in the comments as well, and I will try to get to that during the show. All right, Jameson Williams, literally 6:57. I got a text, and I don't know how long ago the text was from the person who sent it to me, but Adam Schefter of ESPN just reported that Alabama wide receiver Jameson Williams did in fact tear his ACL. He was injured early in the game, national championship game last night against Georgia, and by all means, watching that video, that absolutely was a torn ACL. The ACL, if you can see in this model of a knee, is the ligament in the center of the knee where my index finger is that provides stability against rotational stress. And so when you tear that, a lot of times it's either landing from a jump or planting your foot and turning on it, and then that tibia, the shin bone shifts out from under the femur and the knee buckles. Here's what's interesting. There's two parts of this that's interesting. Let's take last night and then take today. Nick Saban referred to this after the game, and there have been multiple reports since then in Alabama newspapers that said that Jamison Williams wanted to go back into the game last night. Now, they didn't have an MRI of that on the field. Football stadiums have x-rays. They don't usually have MRI capability. And if they did, that takes a long time and would have to be reviewed. That you just couldn't get an MRI during the game feasibly. But one thing about knee injuries and ACL injuries in particular is that the team doctors, the team orthopedic surgeons, and the athletic trainers with the team can usually make the diagnosis of an ACL tear right after it happens just by physical exam. Before the knee's gotten all swollen, before the knee's gotten stiff and the muscles are fighting to protect the knee by spasming or guarding, as we call it, you can almost always tell as a team doctor if an ACL is the injury. And here is why they kept him out. And that was all the accounts. The team doctors and the medical staff, the athletic trainers, would not let him return to play. Well, you ask, well, why is that? Well, here's the problem. And Nick Saban, after the fact, said he's got a lot of football in his future, and that's true, but here's the thing. When the knee is unstable, such as when you don't have an ACL, the problem is if that knee gives way again or gives way several times, you can do more damage to it. Yes, the ACL is already torn, but now you may tear a meniscus that wasn't torn initially, or tear or damage the articular cartilage, the cartilage lining on the ends of the bone. And some of that isn't fixable, so you potentially risk creating an injury that you might not be able to go back and fix. You might do permanent damage to it. So we don't let people go back to play with an unstable knee after a torn ACL. It's just not the right thing to do. Now, to Adam Schefter's tweet, I may need to pull this up, I apologize. He said, well, all right, here we go. He said, Alabama's Jameson Williams, the projected top wide receiver in the 2022 NFL Draft, tore his ACL last night versus Georgia per sources. Doctors believe that after surgery, within the next 10 days, Williams will retain his sub 4.3 speed, and they expect a full recovery. Completely agree, full recovery. Surgery is very good for that at getting back to the same or higher level of play. Typically, that's as early as 6 months, but typically with NFL players, we talk more like 9 months. So you're talking about the beginning of the season when he'd be ready, the beginning of the NFL season. It'll be interesting to see if that affects his draft status, because you'd miss OTAs, you'd miss training camp in the spring, or in the summer, I mean, so you'd miss a lot of time. But a guy with sub 3 speed, if he makes complete recovery, maybe it's worth that gamble. But I expect it could cause his stock to fall just a little bit. Now, the question is, the person that sent this to me highly doubts that it's possible after ACL surgery that you can get back to sub 4.3 speed. Having said this, this is somebody that's not in medicine, not in orthopedic surgery. I absolutely believe you could get back to 4.3 speed. Again, the ACL is involved in rotational stability. You get your full motion back, you should get all your strength back, so you should retain full speed, full power. Should. I certainly wouldn't guarantee that, but that would be the expectation. And we've seen tons of running backs and wide receivers return to top-level ability after ACL surgery. Dalvin Cook is one that comes to mind, but it certainly can happen. So his speed and explosiveness aren't necessarily what concerns me. It's just that he will need time to get back fully before the season. And so that's just sort of a gamble you've got to assume with the team. But do I think it affects his draft status long term? No. If you need a top receiver and you don't absolutely need one for week 1, I'm thinking my Tennessee Titans. I'd love to have another top receiver, because how long is Julio Jones going to be, a 1 or 2 receiver? Yes, we've got the monster A.J. Brown, but I'd love to have somebody like Jamison Williams, and we wouldn't need him for week 1. We wouldn't need him for week 4 or 6, so I feel like that's a good situation. But even if you did need somebody right away, and again, he might get back sooner than that. It's hard to count on somebody being 100% ready at 6 months. I hope he is. That was a big blow. Might have played a big role in why they lost. We'll never know, I guess. All right, next I want to talk about New Orleans Saints quarterback and sort of all-purpose player Taysom Hill. So find out that he has suffered a Lisfranc injury. And I got to see which foot it is, because this is the interesting thing. He's got a Lisfranc injury of one foot. He's had that injury before in college in a game against Nebraska. He suffered a Lisfranc injury in his other foot. So this was his left foot, but he did it to his right foot before. Now, a Lisfranc injury is sort of a tricky injury. This is in the arch of the foot. This is what we call the midfoot. If you're looking at the foot, I'm going to make it long ways here. And this is the big toe, sort of the inside of the foot, and this is the outside. And then you're looking at it from the side. This is the arch of the foot. And the Lisfranc joint is sort of in this midfoot area between the navicular and the cuneiform bones and the first, second, third metatarsals. That's sort of a complex of ligaments. There's one of those ligaments in particular called the Lisfranc ligament, but it can be just that one or multiple ligaments. But what happens is you get instability both vertically and sometimes widthwise, laterally, separation between those bones. Now, this is a lot of times, if you remember years ago, really before we started using MRIs on everybody, you'd hear the term midfoot sprain, and that's what a lot of these turned out to be, because on an x-ray, if the bones lined up well, you thought, well, fine, because ligaments don't show up on x-ray, so hey, there's no problem here. It's once we started getting MRIs and we started seeing these, and we realized that very often those need surgeries. If there's any displacement, any instability at all, you need to go in and fix that, either putting screws across those bones to heal it or sometimes a ligament repair. But that's a monster surgery. That is typically 9 to 12 months. Really, really worrisome. And see, here's the thing. I was reading with Taysom Hill. He's had a number of season-ending injuries in his career. And he's, not just this Lisfranc. He's been battling plantar fasciitis and things in his fingers, mallet fingers, things like that. But he's had 4 season-ending injuries in his career. Now, 2 Lisfranc injuries, one on either side. He injured his elbow in college with a hyperextension injury, and others. And this article that I read about him says they were sort of pointing blame at every time it's happened, it's been a running play. Now, is that bad luck, or is it, maybe he's not just designed to be a running quarterback? Maybe he's really good at it, but it's prone to injury. It's tricky because this gets at what I want to talk about Christian McCaffrey. Indications are the Carolina Panthers have no intention of trading the very dynamic, great playmaker Christian McCaffrey, but also the often injured Christian McCaffrey. Lost a lot of this season to a hamstring injury and also to an ankle sprain. And there was talk that, hey, this guy's never on the field for us. We're going to trade him. They're saying they're not going to do that. But what they have left open the possibility for is to move him, not so much spending a lot of time at running back, but to a slot receiver. Now, it sounds like McCaffrey may not be super excited about this, but when you think of Hill and everything he does and all these injuries he's suffered, career or season-ending injuries from running plays, and then you put somebody in the slot, I'm not convinced that being a slot receiver would be much better for your health, especially when you've had a lot of injuries, than would be a running back. Maybe it'd be a little bit better, but I'm not convinced it would be a ton better. So to me, that doesn't make a ton of sense, but I don't know. Hamstring injuries are really tricky. I haven't talked about it on this show yet. We haven't had one, but these are something you see all the time in soccer. My Liverpool team seems to always go through a stretch where we have a bunch of players injured with hamstrings. Hamstring injuries are tricky because once they happen, you're much more likely to have one again. And I've read studies as high as people that have had hamstring injuries, strains, tears, are 6 times more likely to have one than somebody that's never had a hamstring injury. So the key with it is to get 100% healed and get that muscle and tendon completely healed before you go back out and do it again. Because if it happens again, you set yourself all the way back to the beginning and may make it harder to ever have kind of a normal hamstring. So that can be really, really tricky. All right, real quickly, last 2, because I do want to get to the Memphis Grizzlies are playing the Golden State Warriors tonight. I'm a Memphis Grizzlies fan, super excited about this. We come in on a 9-game winning streak, but Warriors probably the best team in the league, so it should be a good test. And we go into it without our best defender, Dylan Brooks, who has done a wonderful job shutting down Steph Curry when he plays, basically really shutting him down well in the fourth quarter and or overtime, such as in the play-in game last year. So very excited about that. So real quickly, one Golden State Warrior player who will not be in the game tonight is forward Draymond Green. He has a calf injury. Now, there's two things I want to talk about here. One, calf injuries are really tricky. In my experience, they can take anywhere from a few days to 4 weeks. They are very painful, and they are very hard to run and push off and jump. And there's something about those that makes those activities very difficult. So when you see that, just automatically assume this may not be day to day. This could be longer than that. Now, what's interesting is if you watch Sunday night's game where Klay Thompson returned, Draymond Green wanted to be in the game at least a little bit for Klay's return. So he came into the game, they had the opening tip-off, he immediately fouled somebody, as everybody knew, the Cleveland Cavaliers who they were playing knew it, that everybody in the stands knew it. He made a foul, was in the game like 7 seconds, and then he left, never came back in. Now he's going to miss tonight. Here is what's interesting. Supposedly, he told enough people that it was reported in The Athletic about 10 minutes before game time. So then smart gamblers, and if I get breaking news, I'll certainly help you with that too. Smart gamblers went onto the different gambling sites and started betting the under on minutes for Draymond Green, points for Draymond Green, and all the different performance metrics. And the sports books lost millions of dollars, and they had to pay that because it was all legit. Now, apparently DraftKings has some sort of clause about known events, but they ended up paying as well after people started griping on social media when DraftKings held up the bets for investigation. So this is something that, hey, smart on the part of the sharps and the sports gamblers that caught on to that and got their bets in either right before the sports books took them down or before the game started, but very, very smart. And I've heard some won hundreds of thousands of dollars placing those bets, and they were doing like multi-bet parlays on it. Really, really smart on those guys. Just my thoughts on that. And then last, Cristiano Ronaldo. I don't talk a lot of soccer on here. I have seen, the acting manager for Manchester United says it's no big deal. He missed the FA Cup game against Aston Villa, said he was dealing with a minor muscle injury. Sounds like it was his hip, maybe his hip flexor, maybe it's his hamstring where it attaches at the buttock. It's hard to know. Probably not a big deal, but he is 36 years old, so those hip flexor injuries and other muscle and tendon strains, it could be his adductor, those can sort of be a little more difficult as you get older. Body doesn't heal those as well, even a guy in top shape. Now, I have heard rumors that no, he may have been visiting family, all that. I don't know any of that. Manchester United, and I say this as a Liverpool fan, completely biased, but they've just got so much drama all the time around that team. So it would not surprise me at all if this wasn't an injury at all and he was just getting away from the team for a while. Who the heck knows? From an injury standpoint, that shouldn't be a big deal. All right, that is all I've got tonight. If you have any players you want to talk about or any particular injuries, we can do that real quickly. Otherwise, having said that, rest of this week we're going to talk about injuries leading into the Super Wildcard games this weekend in the NFL, and as always, injuries about and players that should be playing that night in the NBA. Plan to be here tomorrow night. Hopefully, I may be a few minutes late, so if I am, I apologize, but I do plan on being here, and Thursday and hopefully Friday night to preview the NFL game. So thank you so much for watching. Make sure if you know people that like to hear about sports injuries, bet on sports, they play fantasy sports and want injury analysis completely free and hopefully a little entertaining, tell your friends to join us, youtube.com/Dr. David Geier, DrDavidGeier. Ring the bell so you're notified when I'm on live. I look forward to seeing you right here tomorrow night. Take care.